Hello everyone, I'm Taka Awori, founder and CEO of Busara Africa, a Pan-African leadership development firm. Welcome to the Leadership in Africa Redefined podcast. This podcast seeks to do two things. One, change the narrative of leadership in Africa, and two, provide concrete strategies and tips for leading in an African context. We do this by interviewing amazing African leaders so that the narrative of leadership in Africa is defined by the best of us, not the worst of us. We share their stories and provide practical suggestions for dealing with the challenges of leading on this continent. We discuss, interrogate, and examine concrete leadership practices that work. We also look at failures that these leaders faced and how they navigated their ways back on track. It's an exciting and empowering space for leaders to thrive and engage. Subscribe to the show to become the leader you have always wanted to be. And if you like the show, be sure you rate it and review it. It helps others to find it. Thanks so much.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Leadership in Africa Redefined. And today, I have one of my favorite people, Dr. Sangu Delle. Sangu, hello, nice to see you.
Great to see you. Great to see you.
So folks, if you don't know Sangu, let me give you a little bit of his bio and you will see why I am as impressed with him as I am. So Sangu is the chair and CEO of CarePoint, a tech-forward healthcare group focused on building Africa's healthcare future. He is also founder and executive chairman of Golden Palm Investments Corporation, one of Africa's leading venture capital firms. And Sangu has been named many things, but among some of the many things that he's been named is Forbes' 30 most promising entrepreneurs and a 2022 Eisenhower Fellow. Sangu is a member of Harvard University's governing board of Overseas Center. And that is one of our connections through the Harvard thing. But, in a minute, you will see. Sangu did Harvard like no one else, at least not the way I did Harvard. I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. But he's also a board member of Aseshi University here in Ghana and Ghana International School. So let me tell you about this Harvard thing. But it's not just about Harvard. You don't know. There's some of you are very happy with your 2 degrees. Sangu has 5. And let me break them down. Not just these 5 that you collect around the corner. So let me start very slowly so you capture all. Sangu has a BA from Harvard, so from the bachelor's from Harvard, a JD, that's the Juris Doctor, that's the one in law, also from Harvard, so that's 2. And now I'm coming to add another one, PAM, and an MBA from Harvard. So those are 3 degrees from Harvard. His 4th degree is a master's from Oxford University. And he also, that's why I'm calling him Dr. Sangu, has a PhD from the University of Birmingham. So you see this, Sangu is not he not a small boy. This is a really amazing person. But also, the thing about Sangu I love, he's also the author of this amazing book. Sangu, you forgot that you gave me this amazing book, which I absolutely loved, called Making Futures, Young Entrepreneurs in a Dynamic Africa. So folks, grab a copy of it on Amazon. I'm blessed to have a hard copy of it. So truly, before I met Sangu and I saw his bio, I was like, oh my gosh, this Sangu. Then I met him and just found he was one of the most humble, thoughtful, warm people I've met. So Sangu, thank you. Lucy, I see your face. Thank you for being you. So I have a lot of questions for you, Sangu, so it's going to be difficult for me to keep this within the time. But maybe I'll just jump right into it. Just from your bio, as the listeners and viewers can hear, there is no doubt that somebody would define you as one of the very successful business leaders. So Sangu, if I asked you to think about your journey, your leadership journey, what are 3 things that you believe made you successful as a leader?
Right. So I think, first and foremost, Before we even get into it, I first want to just thank you for the opportunity to come on this podcast. It's, frankly speaking, I consider it a privilege. You're someone I've known for some time and someone I've long admired. I read your book and I was thrilled that you're contributing to the production of knowledge from Africa about things that matter for us. So first, just want to salute you for those efforts and express my gratitude for the great work you're doing.
Thank
The
you,
second
Sangu.
is, the second is, I think it's very important upfront to correct something, which is in a lot of these fora, of course, people will point out to the plenty degrees I have and all these awards, and I think where the error is where those things are somehow erroneously ascribed to me. The reality is, it would be disingenuous of me, and it would be a lie if I was to take credit. Because number one, I've always known and always accepted, and I've grown to understand that what I do, I'm a deeply flawed person, and I have as many shortcomings as anyone else. But what I've been able to accomplish in life has not been by my merits, but it has been all through the grace of God. And I, a lot of times, look, let's be frank, a lot of Ghanaians, you ask them, how are you? They'll say, oh, by God's grace, right? It becomes almost like a cultural thing, right? But I'm saying this not as a cultural statement, but as a real reflection on when I look back at my life. Because Taka, it cannot be explained but for the grace of God. Okay, I was doing a Doctor of Law degree at Harvard Law. I was doing a PhD in economic anthropology. I was doing a master's in business at Harvard Business School. At the same time, I was writing the book. At the same time, I was working full time. I was running Golden Palm Investments, and I was running it full time. In addition to the nonprofit Clean Aqua, where we work to bring clean water to 200,000. Right? Objectively and rationally, it doesn't make sense. How many hours are there in a day? That's why I say that if you look at it, it is but for the glory of God that these things happen.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And because it's similar, I always point, when I think about my life, I always point to the story of Gideon.
Okay.
Right? Where the prophet Gideon was going up against an army 20,000 strong. Okay. He also gathered his people 20,000 strong. God said, tell the people who are not ready to fight to leave. God reduced it until they were left with 300. Think about it. How do you take 300 people to battle 20,000? But God said, trust me, go. Wow. The next day, God delivered victory unto them. But importantly, God said, the reason I made you go with 300 is because if you went to 20,000, you will think the glory was out of your merit. In making you go with 300, you now understand that it is not your merit, but it is through my grace that I have delivered that victory unto you. And so similarly, if I had first done Doctor of Law, then I had done A, then maybe I had done in sequence. And then I went to do the company, later write a book. These are all great things. But I could have been deluded into thinking it is off my merit or my intelligence or something. But God needed me to understand, just like he had to make Gideon understand, that it is nothing about you. And you are not even worth one kobo of his grace. But it is the depth of his mercy and his grace that he will take someone as broken, as flawed, and as useless as me to say, I will live not for you, but to show the world my glory, my mercy. And so I always say that anytime I acknowledge and I look at my imperfections, my flaws, my shortcomings, only further shows. So, I tell people this about Christianity, right? And about my faith, that some people look at it and say, you're a Christian, but I saw you sinning last week, or I saw this shortcoming. And I tell them that this is the difference. In my faith, it is not a meritocracy. right? You don't go to heaven in my faith because you deserve it or earn it, because we're all undeserving. You only get there because of the profound love God has for us, the mercy He has for us, and His openness, which is why a lot of times, and I don't mean to turn pastor on you, but a lot of right, a lot of times when we fall short, when we sin, become embarrassed and we want to run away from God. That is the devil trying to keep us away from our Father. So I've grown to learn that it is actually when I sin that I get closer to God, right? Because I know what's happening. I know that we're all human. We all fall short. But it is in our shortcomings, it is in our imperfections that we realize the difference between us and our deity, the difference between us and those in the heavens. And that humbles us. So long introductory caveat, but I think it is extremely important for me to pay homage and for me to give credit where credit is due, because none of this is by my merit. None of this is by anything I innately deserve. All of it is undeserving and is all by the grace and mercy. So I need to first confess and apologize to you. That if you were hoping to get all the answers from me, I'm sorry, I have to ask him.
No, but it's interesting. You have already begun to answer that first question just in that introduction, because just in that introduction, you have shown me what has enabled you to be so successful. You're connected to the source. So deeply connected to the source, and you know the source. And when I say the source, I mean the divine, the universe. You're connected such that you know it's not about you, but it's about how the source flows through you and how grace enables you to achieve so much. So already you're giving me insights into that first aspect. So thank you. But let me let you continue. Yes.
Yes. So look, you're spot on. I'll say number one is faith.
Yes.
Right. And there's actually, even for people who are not people of faith, right? Yeah. I always say this. I have friends who are atheists, agnostics, secular. And I have these discussions with them where I tell them that you don't even have to be a believer, right, to learn something, right? For example, I am not, you don't have to be a Muslim for you to be inspired or to learn from certain things from Islam. For example, one of the things I find most beautiful about Islam is the dedication to prayer.
Yes.
5 times a day. It's not easy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
How many of us Christians wake up morning 5 times a day?
Yes.
Right? I always look and I'm just like, I'm inspired by it. Or the dedication to sadaqah, which is where they give alms to the poor. And it is one of the pillars, right? So I look at that and I'm inspired by that. I'm like, look, this is amazing. Or Buddhism, where I was in Asia recently learning, I visited some temples just to learn about it. And their focus on meditation.
Yes.
And then the world beyond you. I mean, all those things, right? So all these I always say that all these different religions, even our indigenous religions, right? Especially our indigenous religions, they all teach us. And the older I've gotten, the more I've also reached the point of realization that only God in heaven can judge. None of us. Who are we to judge? And so I've also reached the point of humility and faith, where I say that, okay, growing up, I'll confess, growing up, I think because of the ways in which we were raised in the church, and I think most of us looked down on some of the other religions, and we really look down on it. Like
like ours is the only way. Ours is the best and only.
And and ours made the most sense. It was logical. Until one day I had a conversation with a friend of mine who was not a believer. And that conversation actually inspired me about 2 things. First, it gave me some context to understand that I need to remove myself from the Kool-Aid and understand it in global and broader perspective. Why? Because if I want to bring more people into the fold, I need to understand the fuller, broader context, and I need to see things as they see. And he said something that was very interesting to me. He said, yes, you guys might look at Hinduism and say, how can they worship a cow, right? Or you might look at the indigenous religions and say, oh, you go and see someone at the shrine and the person consults the ancestors and tells you something, and they say, oh, that's nonsense, voodoo. But if we are being frank and introspective, in our faith, we also believe a whale swallowed a man who sat inside the stomach for 1 week.
Yes.
We believe the Son of God, who was in flesh as human, walked on water.
Yes.
We believe he did this and told the wind and stuff to stop. We believe he took fish, and loaves of bread,
and turned them into yes.
We believe he did this and made people walk up from the dead. So my point being, if we are being objective, none of our stories of faith are any more believable than any of the other religions, objectively speaking. It is our faith that makes us believe, right? It is our faith that allows us to say we believe this. But in doing so, I think we also need to have humility.
Yes.
Right? In knowing that we cannot look down on anybody and anybody's religion. We need to respect people. We need to respect others. And in the same way, we want people to respect our faith and respect us and give us that due respect and that freedom to exercise our faith. Similarly, we should be doing the same for others. So number one is faith. Number two, and I'll go through these quickly. Number two for me really is inspiration from the past, right? Inspiration from the ancestors. And it's, in some ways, it's interesting and tied to faith, no different. So if you follow scripture, you see that all the future prophets, all the way down to Caravan and so there's a connectivity. They all cross-reference the other, right? So there's a building off, right? Down to when you get John the Baptist, who builds on what everybody has said, who talks about their predictions that have come to be, and who emphasizes what's next, right? So similarly, I am inspired by my past. What is that past? I come from Nandom. Nandom is the upper west region of Ghana. It is in a region that is one of the poorest regions in Ghana with a poverty rate of 71%, right? Literally the poorest region in Ghana. And when I go to Nandom, you see, in general, you travel around a lot of different places in the north, upper west, upper east, Savannah, etc., and you realize that there's a clear gap. There's a clear visible gap in development. There's a clear visible gap, right? How do we explain that? History tells us why. When the British came to Ghana, all of Ghana was not a colony. The south was a colony. The north initially was not a colony, right? And so the British actually did divide and conquer. They applied different ways of governing both territories. Initially, there was no education in the north. Education was just in the south. Then eventually, when people from the north were simply by virtue of the geography of where they came from, just because they happened to be born in a particular geography, they were not allowed to go to school. And then when they were finally allowed to go to school, they could not go above grade 6. So much so that in 1919, in Ghana, you had about 290 something schools in the south, educating almost 30,000 students. By contrast, you had only 4 schools in the north at that time that were educating only 211 students.
Wow.
As far back as the 15th and 16th century, right? 15th, 16th, 17th centuries, we had people from Ghana, from the south, people from Cape Coast and other places, Ghanaians, some of them mixed and others, who had PhDs from UK universities, including Oxford and Cambridge, and who had PhDs in theology and other stuff, and came back to the Gold Coast and worked for the colonial. By contrast, the first person from the north to have a first degree, university degree, was 1963. 1963. So there's nobody from the north in my generation that is more than 2 generations educated. It's not possible.
Wow.
My father was among the first generation to be educated. So the first one I told you was 1963. He got his degree in 1970. So when you come out of that history, right? My father was one of 86 children. Only 4 men out of the 86 received education. The first son of the first wife, the first son of the second wife, the first son of the third wife, and my father, whose mother was one of the last wives, was randomly picked, and he was the middle son. Till today, and that's why when I tell you the story of faith and what it means when it is not by your merit, because merit would have meant that the first son of the fourth wife.
Yes.
But they skipped 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, came all the way to about the 19th or so, and then chose the middle son, not even the first. Right?
Wow.
So, and it was but for the Catholic Church who gave my father a scholarship. Then they later sent him to Europe to be fully educated. My grandfather was an illiterate, even though my family comes from the royal family in Nando, right? My father is now the traditional king. But the reality is our people were illiterate. We could not read and write. And so when my father got an opportunity to finally be among the first people in our community to be educated, he maximized it. He went and he got a degree as a doctor. He got a bunch of other. So how much more me, who's now got an opportunity to get more degrees? So I stand on the back, okay, on the back of centuries of my people not having an opportunity, almost a millennium of my people not having an opportunity to actually be able to be educated. And I have that opportunity, and I will not maximize it. So when the truth of the matter is, for the work I do, I only needed my first degree from Harvard. My first degree. I'm being honest, for the work I do not need any of the 4 other people. But the reason I got that was part, as I told you in first, is to follow the path that God has defined for me and to glorify him. And the second is to bring honor to it and to let them know that their toil was not in vain. And that as they toil to create the opportunity for me today, I will honor that toil in maximizing every opportunity I have and in paying it forward to make sure that the future generations of Nandome will be able to also have even more opportunity.
Powerful. And I didn't know this about you. I didn't know this history about you. Powerful. So that's number 2. Even though those are 2 very powerful ones. I'm almost wanting to, yes, I'll take those 2, because I think even those 2 are so, because when I hear you, the first, clearly the passion around your commitment to your faith. What I love about the way you frame your faith is it's deep-seated, it's committed, but it's in a context of openness to the faiths of others, which is often something I find is missing. Folks can be so committed to their faith, but what that does to them is that then, as you said, they look down on others, one becomes very exclusionary, but I love the way you're able to balance the 2. And this second aspect, both are really tied to humility. But the second one is really that commitment to stand, to seize the opportunities you've been given and stand, as you said, on the shoulders of your ancestors who didn't have that opportunity. And, for someone like me who has done a lot of work in the North, I don't think I've heard and who has seen the level of inequalities.
Remember we ran into each other at the airport to the North?
That's true, But what's interesting, Sangu? I don't think I've had anyone so eloquently and clearly clarify why you see the levels of inequalities in the North versus the South. And we always forget the historical antecedents of those inequalities. And instead, you often hear a lot of cultural, what I often find very kind of almost racist, stereotypical answers to why you see the inequalities. But I think the history that you just described says so much to it.
Yeah.
So thank you for jumping into that with us, or giving us that wonderful framework. So I wonder if I may bring you to the continent and the space in which you work, which is very much the business space. I know you have this large foundation doing lots of work around there, but many times you're working with such diversity of businesses on this continent. So my question to you, therefore, is what are you seeing, Sangu, in terms of the quality of leadership within the African business sector today? Generally, what are you seeing? And in terms of what you're seeing, what's exciting you or what is worrying you about what you're seeing?
Very good question. I'm not surprised after reading your book. You always ask the tough questions. So in terms of quality of leadership, first of all, let's take a step back. Assessment of quality of leadership. The first technical question I have for you is, are you asking me to assess it as I see it in real time now? Or are you asking for a comparative historical perspective of how it's evolved?
Almost a combination of the two, and I love your extra framing. So, for instance, if you're seeing certain things that excite you, I may ask you, well, what's exciting you about how does this compare to what you've seen before? So that might be a bit of what are the trends? How has it shifted? If something worries you, So if you can combine the two, that would be great.
So I'll say on the positive side, or maybe I should start on the negative side, so we'll end positively. On the room for improvement.
Okay, yes.
On the room for improvement side, quite frankly, I think that the first thing that gives me a lot of concern, and we've already seen some of it start to bubble up, is, and of course, this is not everybody at all. It's usually a minority. I think majority of people are not like this. I think it's usually a minority, but it is a not insignificant minority that threatens to actually jeopardize the sustainability and growth of a still very nascent fledgling ecosystem. And what is this that I'm talking about? I'm talking about lack of ethics and integrity, which we're starting to see. There are a number of businesses in the venture ecosystem that have now been exposed to different forms of fraud, development. And already in a region where these things really hurt me, because already in a region where unfairly we are looked at with suspicion, unfairly in some cases there's a mispricing and a misunderstanding of risk sometimes. Of course, in the case of Ghana and the absolute disaster that we've seen over the last 2 years, one would argue that there was actually an underpricing of risk, but that's a different conversation for another day, and we'll probably need a lot more time to delve into that. But I think that's one major thing that worries me a lot. Right? Worries me. The second thing that worries me a lot also is the significant hemorrhaging of top talent, not just at the top tier, but also in middle management. In one of my business operations in Nigeria, for example, I had an emergency call yesterday with the CEO because we faced 92 resignations. And by the way, the 92 resignations had nothing to do with it. It's not as if the business it's simply
had an issue,
people going abroad, right? People going abroad, or people being poached to go to, so we have operations in the south, which of course, Lagos and Abuja often have superior care. But for us, it's important for us also make sure there are other parts of outside the two biggest cities, right?
Yes.
Same in Ghana, where we have presence in all the regions, because for us, it's not just about making returns, though that's quite important. I'll always defend that, because making returns actually promotes and incentivizes more capital injection in the sector, and there's a massive deficit and gap that needs to be plugged. So I'm a believer in that, but it's not just that. We're also very much mission driven. So it's important for us to also make sure that we can make healthcare affordable, we can make it equitable, we can democratize access to it, and we can improve quality. So it's a win-win-win across the board. In addition to leveraging economies of scale and scope to help leverage the platform to reduce the cost, while at the same time actually improving quality. So it, when I think about it from that perspective, you especially when you have such a fledgling ecosystem, you have a situation where bad actors can ruin it for everybody. Right? Because people are already on edge about, I don't know. You already hear stories of, coup in Guinea, coup in Niger, coup in Mali. No, these things don't augur well. When I hear these things, it breaks my heart, because I say, why? We're in 2023. Why are we still going down this road? And let's be clear, my response is nuanced.
Yes.
I don't just condemn coup makers in a vacuum. And I don't just condemn us for the coups. I also condemn the ECOWAS, AU, and all these regional bodies for doing nothing about the conditions that led to the coup.
Yes, that led up to the coup. Yes.
Especially the coups that have popular appeal. They sit down and no one says anything when cost of living is soaring, when there's consolidation of power in ways that are undemocratic, when there's clear looting and pillaging, right? When there's clear declining in certain human development indicators, when it's obvious that, corruption is happening with impunity. I mean, these are some of the conditions that create the sort of fertile ground for a coup. I hate coups. I don't like coups. I think coups are terrible. What I also don't like? Conditions that lead to a coup. Right? Is in the same way I don't like armed robbery. But I can't sit back and create a situation where you have, everybody in severe
such
poverty.
High levels of inequality. Yes.
You have soaring levels of inequality and people are literally dying from hunger. What do you expect?
Yes.
You think they're not going to do whatever it takes to feed their families? And so to me, in opposing bad things, we also need to equally look at the structural and contextual issues that allow those bad things. We need to go to the root source. We need to go to prevention. And I think about this both in faith, both in healthcare, both in business, both in policy, whatever it is. Go to the root cause. Keep asking the why. It's not enough to say why he's a bad man. So you what is the cause of that? Why is he? And you keep asking the whys until you get to the root source and you understand this is the root of the problem. And that framework, by the way, is useful in business, right? You dig and understand what it's so useful in faith. Not just to go and say, I did this because I'm a sinner. Well, why did you keep repeating it? Is there some trauma underneath there that you need to engage with and talk, right? What is the underlying source of it? Because a lot of times what you see on the surface, not the real surface. You need to go down, you need to go deep before you're able to really truly understand what's happening.
Hi folks, hope you're enjoying the show. So have you heard about the Africa Leaders Circle? Our impactful e-learning platform that enables you to grow into the leader you would want to follow? Here is a message to tell you what you need to know.
Are you a CEO, executive director, or HR manager that is looking to build a pipeline of leaders that are ready to step up into management roles? Are you looking for a self-paced learning platform that provides your leaders with quality content and does not take them away from their work for too long? Are you looking for a program that enables your managers to move from knowledge acquisition to demonstrable improved practice? Then look no further. Sign them up for the African Leaders Circle today. The African Leaders Circle is an e-learning platform that gives your managers access to an exclusive community of leaders across the continent and a wide range of strategies and tools to stand out. We do this through online courses, discussion forums, a library of resources, and a personal learning advisor to support each of your managers to maximize their learning on the platform. To learn more, visit our website www.busara-africa.com.
Don't forget to visit our website busara-africa.com to learn more. And now back to the show.
So I'm hearing two things that are worrying you in terms of what you're seeing, room for concern. One is and you have to clarify when you're starting to see what you're starting to see in terms of questionable ethics and integrity. You talked about, is that mainly in the ecosystem in terms of venture capitalism, or you're seeing it more broadly within the formal? Okay, more broadly. Mm-hmm.
No, it's broad. Okay. It's broad. And I'll tell you, I think the other thing that has been quite frankly disappointing to me, and it's a global thing, it's not just Africa specific. I think I naively grew up with a lot of faith in our generation, believing that we will do differently than the prior generations, you know, the baby boomers and the silent generation and all those guys. I really believe that we'll do better than them. These are the guys that failed Africa, and our generation by the, you know, we're going to do whatever it takes, and we're going to create a different story for the continent, right? I so believe it. And I've almost been, my innocence, my naivety, and my faith and fire has been shattered and iced out. Because I have come to realize that this generation, sadly,
is what, sorry?
Just as corrupt. And it's not just a situation of being just as corrupt. Some of them are even worse. Because not only have they waited in the wings for so long as these old men have clutched the corridors of power, refusing to let go. So you have a long time of people waiting to get their own. But secondly, unlike the older generation where their eyes were not open, this generation, our eyes are open. The older generation, what did they know? If they had a brand new Peugeot, they were happy. This generation, people know Bugatti, Lamborghini. Can you believe my little nephew, 6 years old, came to me over the summer and said, Uncle Sangu, do you know what I want for my birthday? I said, what? He said, I want you to buy me a car. I thought he was talking about
a little toy car. Yes.
A real car. I said, okay, what car do you want? Thinking maybe, you know, the electric. No.
Yes.
The little boy said I should buy him a Lamborghini. I said, hey, first of all, your father is from London. Where do you know Lamborghini from? Where do you know Lamborghini from? And he's named after me. I said, secondly, your namesake me. When I was your age, I didn't know Lamborghini. Okay.
Yes. So how come you now know Lamborghini and those are your standards at 6?
Because
this global world we live in, they see things.
On his YouTube, he does. When he takes my phone, I'm even scared. He's doing things that I don't even know how to do.
Yes.
So I'm saying that it has changed. The younger generations, their eye has opened in ways that we can relate to. Yes. And so that is the one thing that I have to call it out. That's one thing I'm very disappointed. However,
what gives you hope? Yes.
On the plus side, and as much as I've been heartbroken by, and by the way, before I get to even the plus side, I told you it is not just an Africa or a Ghana thing.
Yes.
Charlottesville, during the whole Black Lives Matter episode in the US,
yes.
you remember the Charlottesville March? Similarly, in the US, we used to believe that, it's the older people who are racist and they are caught in the past. But as we grow up with the younger people, racism will die because younger people, their eye has opened, they know better. What did we see in the Charlottesville and some of the other stuff? The people,
these young ones, yes,
were young ones. In fact, a lot of the people in some of those rallies were young people.
Yeah.
So in the same way in which even in the US and other places, we similarly also thought that the younger generations would know better and do better. We've actually learned the hard way that that's not always the case. But on the plus side, what still gives me hope and inspires me is, one, I have still met a lot of extraordinary, incredible young entrepreneurs who, in spite of all the challenges, in spite of waking up every day in this environment You wake up every day and you know that the world is already against you. You wake up in Accra, chances are more likely than not, the city is worth less today than it was yesterday.
Yes.
Chances are more likely than not, prices have increased. I mean, look at where inflation is. 40%. I mean, it's unbelievable, right? Chances are, look at where interest rates are in terms of borrowing. I was telling somebody, if I'm borrowing at 30% collateral, I mean, am I doing cocaine? No, I mean,
how can you get that? How can you pay that back? Exactly.
What business am I doing and what margins am I charging customers to be able to cover the 30% plus my profit plus, come on, right? And so the environment really is harsh. But that's why I also say that successful African entrepreneurs, if you put them anywhere in the world, they are global superstars. Because if you can build a thriving business in this environment, then you go to an environment where you have regular access to electricity. Water is not a problem. The government is not knocking on your door every day trying to harass you for taxes or what have you. Look, yesterday, it's a case I'm handling now. Yesterday, ironically enough, I was actually on my way for a meeting at the police headquarters for a different matter. On the way, I have the videos. This is something I'm actually handling the leak. On the way, policeman stops me, pulls me over, checks, you know, the usual thing they do. They are checking your stuff and effectively they just
your license.
Something. And I have time. We can be there. So when he saw I clearly was not prepared to be cooperative in bribing, he got angry, told me to come out of the car. And by the way, so I asked him permission that, look, where things are going, I'd like it to be recorded. So I had my driver record it and made me pull out all my pockets, search me almost like a strip search. Nothing. So then he moves to the bag, right? I collect the camera from my driver and I'm filming as the bag is being searched. And then he tells me I should be filming the bag. And you can see from the camera that I am filming the bag. And then he moved on, and you can see it in the video. He moves on to physically assault.
What?
I'm telling you. So look, this is a matter, make no mistake. I mean, and it was clear to me that this is something he does every day and gets away with it. He physically assaulted the wrong person, right? And
he did not know who he was dealing with.
I'm not going to let go of this because to me, this is a crusade, right? That I am willing to fight to the death by, because it is clear that this police officer has been going around acting with impunity, assaulting citizens, violating their rights. And you know what he told me? I actually mentioned to him, and you can see in the video, didn't raise my voice. I was very calm, but I asked him, officer, no basis for this. I just want to understand. Is there probable cause? Is there an issue? Why are you pulling me over? Right? Why are you being aggressive? Why are you assaulting me? And luckily, and I took contemporaneous notes, and my driver was there as a witness. He assaulted me, a useless baller person, I should get out. So I told him this. I said, my member of parliament in Nandom is actually the Minister of Interior, right? The Honorable Ambrose Derry. So I told him, I said, look, what you are doing right now, not only is it unethical and unprofessional as a police officer, right? It is actually a violation of both my constitutional rights and my human rights, as guaranteed by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, by the UN, to which Ghana is a party. So I told him, I said, look, I am actually going to I'm going to complain and send a report. My MP, who's also the Minister of Interior, about this sort of behavior, because this behavior is very bad. It brings disgrace upon the Ghana police. It is illegal, and it's also a violation of my human rights. Do you know what he told me? I should get out of his face. If I like, I should go and bring Vice President Baumia to come. Oh, I'm telling you. But that's my point that I'm telling you, that this is the impunity. And why wouldn't a police officer act like this with impunity when he sees his superiors, ministers, and other people in government also act with impunity with zero consequences? So why will he not? He's taking his, he's learning from the tone at the top. Right? He's learning from the tone at the top. So it is quite sad and quite unfortunate But that's even though that gives me concern, again, what gives me hope, like I said, this same policeman. I've also met policemen who have refused to take bribes. I've met policemen who have even told me certain things, and they told me that no, because there was one policeman I met when I was recently, I was driving from Nandom back to Accra. Met the policeman. Policeman was so amazing, so good, so professional. So I asked him, I said, you are very different.
Yes.
We had a long conversation. He was even on his way. I gave him a lift. So we spoke in the car for a while. And he was telling me, he was like, a lot of things these people do. It is not legal and it is not in accordance with the police handbook.
Yes.
But they bully us, they abuse us because there's no impunity, right? Because nobody is standing up for the regular citizens. And I see it when I'm driving around. It didn't used to be like this. They pull over young boys, harass them, just strip search them with no obvious probable cause, right? They abuse them, they violate their human rights, and I'm very happy they did it to me. Because I will spend every bit of energy, I will spend every resource I have, and I will make sure that I take them to task in every forum, so that tomorrow, not for me, what do I care?
Yes.
I was able to, it's not for me. But okay, you assaulted me, I'll be okay. I'll be okay. Me, I don't care about those things. But it is for the future people that he will continue to abuse, that he will continue to bully, that he will continue to violate their human rights.
Oh, powerful. Right? Powerful.
And that's why it's a crusade I'm willing to die for. I will never relent on this issue until the Ghana Police Service not only gets rid of this bad apple, but reforms and transforms itself to live up to a proper ideal to protect citizens instead of harassing citizens, abusing citizens, and violating the rights of citizens. Enough is enough.
Powerful. Oh, powerful. And you know what's so interesting about this example, and please keep me posted on this, I'm going to be following how this goes, is it's an indication of the type of leadership we need on this continent. Huh? Many of us are in privileged positions. Huh? I mean, Sangu, you have a privileged position. Just talk about the connections you just mentioned, who your MP is, who you know, you're a lawyer, you know your rights, you know all of that. Huh? But what I'm hearing from you and how you have responded to this case is what I find for many of us, because the kind of impunity that you discuss, that you experience with respect to this policeman, normally what happens, as you said, he's probably been doing this nonstop all the time. Huh? But for an average citizen who doesn't know anyone, who has no connections, they have no recourse. But what I often find is even privileged citizens will address this. It's a public issue. It's not a private issue, but they will deal with it as a private matter. They will sort this one alone. And what I'm hearing you say is those of us who have privilege by nature of our education and our connections, when we see and experience these situations, we use that privilege, that's leadership, to say just what you said. I'm fixing this situation, not for me. I can solve it. But for all of those and you're not just dealing it with in terms of one person, this one policeman, you realize it's systemic. There needs to be reform around accountability and how people in the security sector actually manage their power. Very powerful. Sangu, with you, I could keep talking forever because I have like 5,000 more questions. I literally have to manage and lead myself to actually end this. But I just want to thank you so much. Thank you for being such a beacon. Thank you for reminding us when we forget and think it's all about us. We go by the grace of God. Our achievements are a reflection of her loving goodness and ability to shine light on us and all the ancestors who have been before us, on whose shoulders we stand on. But continue to be you. continue to shine that light and keep us posted on this case, because it's not just about that one policeman, as you said. It's really about generally how leaders occupy power, impunity, and accountability, and fundamentally governance in our country. So
absolutely.
Thank you. Yes.
Let me just end with a quick message. And
Yes.
here is, I assume there will probably be young Ghanaians and the youth and others who might be listening to this. And I want to speak to them directly.
Yes.
I'll be very honest. Ghana has become a very tough place. For my entire life, when I was blessed to get scholarships to go to the US, and I wrote myself a letter. The day before I left the shores of Ghana, I wrote myself a letter. In the letter, I swore to myself that no matter what opportunities I got in the US, no matter what I did when I was done, I wanted to just earn the education, the skills, and the training I needed. And I would always come back home to help build the country and to help contribute to the country. That was a promise I made to myself. To be very honest, last year, I never broke that. I was broken.
Wow.
I was broken because the hope, the fire, the desire I all had to transform this country. In 1 year, we suddenly had 70% of every single Ghanaian's work.
Yes.
And we had it in a way that unprecedented corruption.
Yes.
Looting and pillaging. And what killed me the most was the impunity. The damage that has been done to the institution of democracy in this country. The damage that has been done to the perceived independence of the judiciary. The literal consequences of the failure of leadership, which I see when I go to Nambo and I see hospital for 60,000 people, and women are on the floor being operated on. I went to the ER and there's just one monitor and it's not even working. So their doctors are operating on these women blindly. Okay, I went to the basic school and you saw that passage rate was 10 and 10. I went to the classrooms myself. They don't have textbooks. The teachers are using their little tiny Android phones to try and go on Google to see how they can find content. And it broke me. And this was the first time in my life I truly considered leaving because I was broken. It's as if all the efforts I've done over the past 2 decades has been in this.
Shattered.
And as I prayed about it, and I was at the point of almost brokenness, which I know a lot of us are. The 2 things that kept me going with my fellow young folks. One, let's remember the story and the path to the promised land. So many setbacks. Having to be confronted with the Red Sea. But in spite of all of that, they had faith. God was able to pay them. So that overriding faith is kind of what kept me going, to know that, you know what, you must keep going. But the second thing related to the first is the Israelites did not sit down at home thinking, saying, faith doesn't work alone. Faith works with action. Faith required them marching, walking, running, crying, praying, striking rods to part the Red Sea. They had to walk the walk and endure what they endured to get to the promised land. And what that told me, and this is what I want to speak to all of us, faith alone and Famanyame alone is not going to. And that's why, if you've noticed, I've now been a lot more vocal. I've now been a lot more activist about these issues, because if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? And will it be too late? Will there even be a country to save if we don't start? My appeal to everybody is, you might feel helpless, you might feel out of control, in our own little ways, the little agency we have, just like our national anthem tells us, let us resist oppressors' rule. So when the police abuse us within the confines of the law, let us resist. Let us, even though we don't think there's going to be anything coming out of it because we may not think the courts or the agencies, let us still do it. Let us write the letters and complain. Let us tweet. Let us do everything we can do in our power and with our agency to as much as possible within the confines of peaceful demonstrations and within the confines of the law. Let us resist every day, because what they are counting on, that will give up. What they are counting on is that we'll throw our hands in the air and say there's no point in this. That is what they're counting on. But what we need to do is to let them understand that we are willing to fight every single day. Because we know that eventually, in the same way the Lord left the Israelites to the promised land, and indeed they found that promised land, we too, in spite of the bad apples, which have now tainted and infected majority of the apples, in spite of that, we believe that we will be able to get to our promised land, where we'll have proper governance, where we will not have the looting and pillaging. A promised land where we cannot say everybody will be equal, but at least everybody has a fair shot.
Yes.
A promised land, whether you are born in Nandom or Kintampo or Accra or in Koko or Kumasi, it does not determine what opportunities you have. That you at least have a fair shot to be educated, to have decent healthcare, and to have a decent shot, knowing that with hard work, you can accomplish your dreams. Because Ghanaians are some of the hardest working people in the world.
Yes, they
People
are.
don't want handouts in Ghana. They just want opportunity, and they just want good governance, and they just want a fair shot.
Yes.
That's all we ask. So let's not give up. Let's fight it on a daily basis. And by God, I know we're going to get there. We can't give up. Cannot give up, because that's what they need.
Amen. Thank you, Sangu. I hope you all heard that. Let us resist oppression's rule. Amen. Sangu, thank you so much. You've been so amazing. I feel inspired. I feel in terms of that sense of, yes, we're not keeping quiet, for sure, because that's what they're counting on. And that's the leadership we need and deserve. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Take care. Bye.
Hello, wonderful leader. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the podcast. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. If you want more of the lessons, experiences, and nuggets for effective leadership, join our amazing platform for leaders, the African Leaders Circle. Learn more at www.busara-africa.com. And if you liked the show, don't forget to subscribe and share with other amazing leaders. See you soon. Ciao.